Shawnee is with it on sell to sell, with it, our resident herbalist. And yeah, take it from the top there.
Okay, alright, David's asked me to talk about herbal medicine. Really quite simply, herbal medicine is the most simplest and naturalist form of medicine that we have on the planet. If you think about the three kingdoms, there's plant, mineral and animal. And the plant kingdom, which we use for our food, is where we get the herbs from, which are different family and species of plants. It's been used on the planet for so long in all countries. All countries have their own specific plants that they've used, and because we've become more globalised, the plants have tended to cross over, so now we're getting plants that were used predominantly in other countries are now used here in Australia and vice versa. Wow, plants, what's the difference between plants, herbal medicine and allopathic medicine, which is where you go to your doctor? Well, the main difference is that the allopathic or doctor's medicine has taken the chemical in, most of the time it's a plant. 75% of most drugs, perhaps it's now 50%, but it used to be 75% of drugs were made from the idea of a plant. So they took the chemical out of the plant, synthesized it all, or produced it in a laboratory and then made it into a medicine. That's how we've got things like aspirin and digitalis for cardiovascular diseases, which is from foxglove, etc., etc. So they've got the idea from the plant and they've taken it. However, the difference is that it doesn't have all the other ingredients in it, like the minerals and the vitamins and the buffers, which help settle down if there's any chemicals in a plant that may be a little bit toxic, as you can have with mushrooms and other plants. So you might have a buffering system in the plant, and that'll sort of, if you take it whole, as in the plant rather than separate, you have less side effects and adverse reactions. And very interestingly enough, studies that you do on research from medical drugs as opposed to herbal medicine, the whole plant, you'll see that things like there's been thousands of deaths perhaps with the medical drugs side effects, and there's something like 0.1% with herbal medicine. So it's really, really very safe as far as general use goes. There is a caution with what you're using though for yourself, because remember, at the end of the day we're all different, and we need to, if we're looking after ourselves medicinally with herbal medicine, it's important to know how the body works, because you could be taking a herbal medicine that, number one, you don't need, number two, the dosage may not be therapeutic. It may be so low that it's like taking a lolly. You may as well not be taking it. At the end of the day, primarily herbs should be used first for your food, and then if you're going to use it medicinally, then you need to look at a little bit more into research about how your body's working and your mind and your emotions, because remember, we are all that as human beings. And by getting all of those together, then the herb will work so much better. Just a quick example, say for would be garlic, which is so commonly used culinary, and it has so many wonderful medical usages. It's what we call now as modern herbalists a polypharmacological herb, meaning it's got so many therapeutic values in just the one herb, cardiovascularly, lowering fats in the blood, immune stimulant or immune response, I should say. Yeah, there's just so many things for that one herb. So if you're going to take it medicinally, it's important to know how much that you're going to be taking. And then of course there's the method, like is it going to be used in the cooking, or is that going to be enough, or perhaps you need it dried, or it may need to be in an extract form or a capsule form or a tablet form, or sometimes we use it as a poultice or a cream, but not necessarily with garlic because of the smell, obviously. But there, you know, there's many different reasons that you may be taking a herb in general, or the methods. So you've got to work out which is the best method. As a lifestyle maintenance, herbal teas, I mean, they're just so fantastic. most Westerners have a cup of tea, but it's Chinese tea. Now, Chinese tea has now extended to green tea, which is wonderful. That's the same plant, it's just less processed. So yes, there's going to be a few more antioxidants and a few more volatile oils and all the special components that are in a plant to help you get better. But at the end of the day, it's not doing specific things for the body, it's more of a general care tea. Whereas you could have a tea in the form, a plant say like dandelion leaf, which would be fabulous for your kidneys, just to help them with their 4 or so functions that the kidneys do. Or the dandelion root, which is fabulous for your liver, which does about 9 or 10 different functions in the body. There's the products on the market now sell them as tea bags. You can buy echinacea tea bags, rosehip tea bags, which are all very valuable. And they're a lifestyle usage of the herbs. When it comes to medicinally using herbal medicine, it's important to really not just look in it yourself, but ask a professional. Why? Because at the end of the day, they've done so much training. That's why they've got there. These days now we have a STET standard of training, and it's now extended in the herbal medicine field to a master's. You can now actually acquire, if you're really interested in herbal medicine studying yourself, you can actually go to the master's level, and hopefully one day we'll get doctorate, which is what I want to do. But anyway, that's another story. So if you're using herbal medicine, make sure that you know, you understand the processes of the body, and that, you know, generally herbs will go better when they're used with other herbs. So you can have the simple form, say if you've got a cold or something, you might tend to go to echinacea, but it will work better if you're using other herbs that assist other functions in the body that also help you when you are sick.
Just one question. You know, like in certain drugs you can't mix because they clash.
Yes.
With,
Yes.
Does that work the same with herbs? Is there certain herbs that don't go well together, and there are some that sort of like contribute or work well?
Absolutely. When it generally has to do with the medium. Like there's a percentage when you have a herbal extract. Herbal extract is a very high concentrated form of a herb in generally alcohol preservative. And depending on the level of alcohol preservative, some are 90%, some are 40%, some are 25%. So generally, you don't, if it's a different percentage, you tend not to use another herbal extract with a higher or lower percentage with that particular one, because it'll take the efficacy out of the extracts formula. But the type of plants specifically, it generally has to do with the person, their variances. Some herbs aren't necessarily valuable with certain ages. Some are more prone to being used with the elderly rather than the young, or vice versa. It doesn't necessarily mean that it's absolutely you don't use it on a child, but you definitely have to take into consideration obviously the dosage. And their state of health, their lifestyle, how long they've been sick. You look at all their history. So when you go to a professional herbalist, they will do that. They will go through the history. Similarly to a naturopath, they'll look at the tongue, if they're trained in the tongue, the general observations of the body, the blood pressure, the pulse, the nails are very valuable. There are extended diagnostic tools that people also use outside that, like the iridology and the blood testing, but just general, if you look at the basics of the age, their lifestyle, how long they've been sick, is an acute or a chronic disease, then that will all need to be taken into consideration, because then the dosages will change, the frequency will change. So it's not just enough to say, oh yes, echinacea is great for the immune system. Yes, but okay, what type of echinacea? Because there's different species. To my memory, there's 9 species and only 3 are really medicinal. So you look at which one's going to be valuable for which condition, what dosage, and how often do you take it? And then when do you know to drop down? All these things can be helped through just going through a professional, saving a lot of time, and in the end you probably save money. I mean, which you know, in a world where we live with material needs, it's very important to take into consideration not just the time, but the amount of expenditure on all levels that you're going to be looking at when you go to a professional herbalist or medical herbalist, as we're starting to be called now. So the field's definitely moving forward, and hopefully we'll have herbalists moving down the hospital wards, which would be wonderful, because as a nurse that would be fantastic, working alongside with doctors. And next time you do go to your GP, don't be afraid to tell them that you're on herbs, because this is the other big factor that we have an issue with. We need that bridge to be formed between the two professionals, and when we have that bridge, we will be able to have better care for the general public, and there will be less cost involved with the general expenditure of health. So let's onward with herbs. Thank you.
I'd like to thank you for your time, Anne-Marie. That was great.
I could start crying because I love it so much. Could you tell?